I go right to the congressman or to his office and give him all background information on what the issues are. Excuse me, can I have some water? Someone's got some water. Or a drink, whatever. So the congressman has been very well versed as far as what our issues are, and why don't you start off with a little bit of introduction and
Sure. Thank you, Otto, and thank you for inviting me back to the marketing meeting, and also just want to thank, in addition to Otto being my FPC, also Don Fott and Jennifer Branchini, two others who have kind of guided me and have been good friends and have not been afraid to speak frankly to me about what I need to learn and get up to speed on with the industry. And so just to bring you up to speed personally, I am now heading into the end of my first term, and it's been pretty exciting. I grew up in this area. This is not far from where I grew up. I graduated from Dublin High School. I went back to college, back east on a soccer scholarship, came back home and worked as a lawyer in the Alameda County District Attorney's Office for 7 years. I had interned on Capitol Hill for Congresswoman Ellen Tauscher, and also served as a local city council member. And as a kid, I went to 5 different elementary schools. 5 different elementary schools. So I would always, every new school year was also a new school usually. And my parents were doing everything they could to try and find the best schools for me and my 3 younger brothers. They were trying to find the most affordable place to live. And I remember at the earliest of ages wanting to no longer be renters, because I knew that would mean stability, and that I could go to the same school the next year rather than having to say goodbye to all my friends, because it was likely my parents would move us again. And so I started learning about the real estate listings as soon as I could really read the newspaper. And I would kind of take the listings to my parents. I would circle them, and they would tell me, no, we probably can't afford that, or no, we're trying to move us into a better school area for you and your brothers. And so finally, when I was 14 years old, one of the happiest days of my life, my parents were able to buy their first home in Dublin. And it was a very exciting moment for them. For my brothers and I, we were just thrilled that we wouldn't have to move around anymore. And I learned from that experience that how important it is to have the mortgage interest deduction, which was one of the only ways my parents were able to buy and keep that home, was factoring that in and budgeting that in to their annual finances. And from that point forward, I've been educated on realtor issues and industry issues, but nothing has, I think, guided or informed me more than that experience as a kid, knowing how valuable it is to have means and methods for first-time homeowners to really realize the American dream of home ownership. And again, for me, that meant stability, and it meant I could graduate from Dublin High School rather than, kind of going to a bunch of different schools and not really having roots anywhere.
Great, great. Well, we have some questions here. First set of questions would be, you're currently serving as our congressman for the 15th district. What area does that all encompass?
Sure. 15th Congressional District goes from Livermore, Pleasanton, Dublin, San Ramon, Sunol, Castro Valley, Hayward, Union City, and Fremont.
About how many people is that in here?
It's about 750,000 people, and actually it's about 749,995. My parents and all my brothers moved out literally weeks after I was elected. We had all gone through Dublin here together, and they all abandoned me. They thought he doesn't need our help anymore. We were just living here to vote for him, and so.
What's great about the area that he encompasses, it does represent the total membership for the Bay East Association of Realtors, so about 4,500 realtors, plus it encompasses a little bit of the area of Contra Costa Association out in San Ramon. So this congressman's our voice when it comes to real estate issues. So you're serving as our congressman. Tell us, what is the difference serving as a congressman in contrast to serving on the city council, or serving, you were a district attorney or worked with criminals, now you're a congressman.
Some would argue that I'm still working with criminals. So I would say the city council experience really did prepare me in many ways. I don't think I could be an effective congressman without having sat through a number of different daycare approval hearings or parking hearings. I mean, nothing brings out the community like someone wanting to put a daycare in their court, and then you have to sit up there in front of all your friends and neighbors and explain why you're going to make the decision you are. That was actually very good, I think, preparation for Congress. Working as a prosecutor, I had to collect evidence, put it in front of a jury, make a case, and then ask 12 citizens with no connection to the case to do the right thing. And I think that's very similar to what I have to do in this job, which is I have to convince my colleagues, gather evidence, ask them to vote in the way that I'd like them to vote with me, or every 2 years ask the constituents that I represent, based on the evidence I've presented, to send me back to Congress. Now, the difference between Congress and the courtroom is that in the courtroom, to get a conviction, I always needed, as you know, to get a verdict, you need a unanimous verdict. I've finally given up on trying to get a unanimous vote, whether it's in Congress or at the ballot box. But it did take a little while for me to realize you don't need to get every single person on your side, but the prosecutor's mentality was to do that. But I think it really taught me most importantly, whether being a city council member or a prosecutor, was how to listen to people and then use what you learned to present that in the case that you're making.
And how many years did you serve as a district attorney?
So I was a prosecutor for 7 years and started out doing misdemeanor prosecutions. Sometimes I encountered friends that I grew up with across the Tri-Valley for minor offenses, and then moved my way up. And the last 3 cases I did were 3 homicide cases, which is also, I think, informed me on some of the issues we deal with nationally as far as gun violence and what we can do there to really try and prevent the number of families that have to lose a loved one over something so senseless. And one of the last cases I had was an assault rifle was used to kill a teenager, and he was shot just once in the thigh, and that was enough to kill him because of the sheer velocity and energy from the bullet. And that, when you make decisions in Congress about what weapons should be allowed, what weapons should not be allowed, having that experience and having to talk through the crime with the families who are suffering, that definitely, I think, gave me another, I think, level of understanding about what violence does to communities.
One thing that we're real fortunate about is that with the Congressman's relationship with Nancy O'Malley, who's our Alameda County District Attorney, they've been instrumental in creating a real estate fraud division, which is very active in Alameda County. So just an FYI out there, if anybody's aware of any fraud that's going on in our industry, which we know that occasionally we hear things, don't be hesitant to contact the District Attorney's office, and they do have a very well established fraud division. And Nancy knows that she can call upon us. There's a few of us that she can call upon if they need any expert advice or witness.
And when I was a prosecutor in the office, almost every prosecutor was instructed that if you saw, we were kind of given all the different signs to look out for, and if you saw them, to take pictures of them and write down the information so that, we buy houses or houses here cheap. We knew all of the different, fraudulent signs that were out there that affected your market. And so I know that that's still the mindset of the office, which is it's not a reactive prosecution office. It's proactively looking for people who are trying to game the system and hurt people financially.
A lot of elder abuse also. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about different real estate issues that we have. How do we compare our issues as opposed to the Cattlemen's Association or to the Bankers Association? I mean, how do our issues, or what are some of the top issues from other associations that talk with you?
on a day-to-day basis, in our Washington office or here at home, we will have a half dozen different groups that come into the office and want to talk about everything from the cattlemen will be in wanting to talk about agriculture policy. You'll have wind turbine engineers and you want to talk about wind tax credits. You'll have veterans groups wanting to talk about how poorly we are treating our veterans. And then you'll have a refugee group that wants to talk about policies for unaccompanied minors who are coming across our southern border. So throughout the day, you're kind of being taken on a carousel of different issues across our country and many times across the globe. And so, you know, I've come to, after doing this for now, like I said, going on 2 years, I've seen kind of 2 rounds of the fly-ins, because most organizations will come to Washington at least once a year. Now, NAR usually a little more frequently than that, and I think the more effective organizations a little more frequently than that. But I've kind of had an opportunity to sit back and listen to these groups as they come to Washington or visit us here locally. And I will say that NAR and CAR and Bay East are of the most effective, and here's why. They come in prepared. They know not to play politics on these issues, that just because a member of Congress is a Democrat or Republican, and just because the media would suggest that every issue is looked at through that lens, that actually the only legislation that's really going to move are the ones that have support on both sides. And so NAR has been very effective at kind of finding that sweet spot, whether it was on flood insurance reforms that were recently made or protection for MID, finding that sweet spot among Democrats and Republicans so that they're not in there putting a member in an uncomfortable position where they're asking somebody to be the only one in their party to support what they're asking Congress to do. So they've been very effective at doing that. But I would say the other piece of advice I'd give to anyone who ever lobbies a mayor, a city council member, an assembly member, a member of Congress, any elected official, is always have an ask. So many times a group will come into our office and we'll sit there and I'll talk to them for 20 minutes and I'll learn about their industry and what they do and how it affects the district. But I'm always surprised at how many of them leave without asking me to do anything. And I'll kind of prompt them and I'll say, well, is there anything I can do to help? And I'm always surprised at how many of them don't have an answer to that. And I happen to be of the mindset that I'm here to help, that I want to solve problems. I like when challenges are put in front of me, regardless of who the group is. I want to at least sort through the issues and see if there's a solution. And so if you go there with a problem that needs to be solved, I think most members will at least want to look at the problem, have their staff, bring them up to speed, and then hopefully get back to you with an answer. But never miss the opportunity to ask an elected official who is accountable to you to do something.
How does how does Congress look at NAR as far as being the big gorilla?
I think NAR is regarded as one of the premier advocacy organizations in Washington, D.C. There are a few others. Cattlemen's, you mentioned them. They are regarded as a very effective organization. But I think NAR, because it has such a local, personal touch, these are local realtors. They know the community very well. It's a very personal appeal that they usually make. I think that's very effective. And so I do think that when they speak, members of Congress listen. They don't always do what NAR wants, but I think that
most of the time they do. Most of the time they do.
But they do listen, and I think that's a testament to how personal they make the appeal.
So let's talk about committees. You sit on a couple committees right now. Did you get a chance to say, I want to sit on those 2 committees, or did somebody up above say, no, these are the 2 committees that you'll sit on?
Well, when you go to Congress, you are allowed to put in requests for what committees you want to be on. And they have what are regarded as A-level committees, and that's like the Committee on Ways and Means, the Committee on Energy and Commerce, etc. And then there's, I would say, B and C level committees. The 2 committees I was assigned to, which kind of, I think, reflect my interests in district, the Committee on Science and Technology, which has jurisdiction over the largest employer in our district, which is the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and Sandia National Laboratory, as well as also does a lot of energy work with Chevron, which is the largest private employer in the district. And then the other committee, I'm on the Committee on Homeland Security, which reflects, I think, my background as a former prosecutor, son of a police officer, somebody who cares deeply about public safety. Now,
How many people are on that committee?
so the Republicans get about a 10 or so member advantage on each committee. So each committee is about 25 to 30, and then the Republicans have about anywhere between 7 to 10 more members because they are in the majority. So if it were to switch back, then the ratios would change. But the Republicans always will get, sometimes 2/3 of the committee members will be Republicans, or 60-40 split. The Science and Technology Committee, I think, as far as your industry goes, what we're seeing right now is the Bay Area is leading the way when it comes to growth in biotechnology, biopharmaceutical, green energy, and software and health information systems. And I've tried to work on that committee to do everything I can to enable further growth here in those sectors. And I think there's 3 ways to do that, which will, of course, increase the quality of life and increase what the home values are. And the first way to do that, I think, is to make sure that investors here have access to capital. And that means having a comprehensive tax policy that is, I think, pro-growth and allows people to make investments here. I think making sure we have a brain trust of individuals to go into this new economy, which means having our students up to speed on science, technology, engineering, and math. I know you've had the Pleasanton Superintendent of Schools here before to speak to you. She's terrific. Pleasanton is one of the few school districts in my entire congressional district that has a full-fledged STEM program, and I know other schools are moving to that, but I really think that is the future economy, and that's what we need our students to be prepared to do. And then finally, having a risk-taking culture. That having a brain trust of individuals, having access to capital, and having a risk-taking culture, I think, creates the innovation you need. And part of having a risk-taking culture would be having comprehensive immigration reform so that there is certainty for people who study in our schools here. Instead of sending them back to their countries to compete against us, we allow them to move into our economies here and create jobs. So I think having those 3 are critically important to having that type of environment. Also, I've talked to a number of CEOs and venture capitalists about what factors go into your decision to locate a company in a community. They told me that one of the number 1 factors is affordability of housing, and that they have to think about their employees and where they're going to draw their employees from. And so, I think having an affordable housing stock really is critical if we want that innovation economy to continue to develop around us.
So we talked, you're on Homeland Security. You just came back, you were in the Middle East. And you guys were on vacation, right? Or they don't call it vacation, they call it a...
For the month of August, we had a congressional work period or congressional recess. For us, we did kind of a number of town halls across the community. And then also I do what's called Congress at Your Company, where we'll go out. I went to Chevron, as I mentioned, the largest private employer, and we'll do a town hall like this, take questions. So if you have a company that you think would be good for an office visit, or the title companies are good because they have a lot of employees, and if you have a company that you think I should visit, or a realtor office, I'd be happy to go out and talk about specific company issues and then take questions. And then at the end of the month, I went to Israel, the West Bank, Jordan, Egypt, and Morocco, and I was able to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, King Abdullah of Jordan, and the President of Egypt. And the purpose of that trip was the rising threat of the Islamic State, also known as ISIS or ISIL, and they are growing and expanding faster than any terrorist organization in modern history in such a short period of time. And so these countries are very fearful of whether they could be next, and I'm very fearful, being on the Homeland Security Committee, knowing that over 100 and more, and we're still learning how many more, American citizens have gone over to fight shoulder to shoulder with Islamic State fighters in the Middle East. And the fear is that they could come back to the United States with the skills and tactics and hate that they've built and attack us here. We also know that thousands of Westerners, Western European citizens, who would have access to fly into the United States under what we call a visa waiver program, agreements that we have with those countries, are fighting shoulder to shoulder with the Islamic State. So doing everything we can to make sure that that does not happen is important to me, but also recognizing that in 2003, we went into Iraq with no Arab country allies. We had very thin, unfounded evidence justifying what we did, and that didn't end up too well for us. And so learning from the mistakes of the past there, I think should guide us as we move forward and hopefully work in a coalition of Arab countries rather than against what they perceived their interests were last time.
How many other people joined you over there?
So I was able to go with the chairman of the Armed Services Committee and then 6 other members of Congress. So it was a small group, but we spent about 2 days in each country and met with, as I said, the heads of state and also visited our military installations over there.
And what was your entourage? Who was around you guys?
So we were fortunate that we had State Department security. That we were not allowed to leave any of the hotels that we were staying at because of the security environment in Egypt and Jordan and even parts of Israel. This is when the conflict with Hamas was just winding down. Was not great. So we were fortunate that we were well protected. I'm grateful every day to our State Department security. They're all former military. So just more and more mindful of how much they do to keep all of us safe.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about partisanship, bipartisanship, coalition, Democrats, Republicans. I know we have some Democrats in the room, we have some Republicans in the room, we got an independent in the room, and I know you're a Democrat, but you have shown, although you're a Democrat, and I know you at times get pressure from up above on votes, how do you work a room? I mean, how do you work a room when you have an issue? And tell us a little bit when you first got in your first year.
So I've been working with Republicans since I was able to talk. My mom, my dad, all Republican. All my brothers, all Republican. Aunts, uncles, all Republicans. I'm the first Democrat in the family that anyone's ever known. And I'm still...
His dad lets me know that too.
Yes, and I think I've converted one of them to switch to independent, but they're still aggressively trying to convert me. And so since I was a kid, I've had to work across the table, I guess, with Republicans, and nothing changed when I went to Congress. The first thing they do when you get to Congress is congressional orientation, and they send you to Harvard University for congressional orientation. And at this Harvard University orientation, I was able to work with 80 brand new other members of Congress, about 50-50 split of Republicans and Democrats, and walked away from that, starting a small coalition called the United Solutions Caucus. It was just 4 of us at the time, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. But we went back to Washington, and week by week by week, we met and brought more and more people into the group. Today we have about 38 members, Republican and Democratic members. We have legislation that we've introduced on a bipartisan basis, and I'm fortunate that I was able to pass and have the president sign 2 bills into law that I worked with members of that coalition to get passed. And believe it or not, I think this is a sadder indictment on the state of Congress. No fresher member of Congress has passed and had it signed into law more bills than 2. That's the most right now in this Congress. And so I get frustrated because at times you do see the hyper-partisanship, and at times it's even more, I would say it hurts more when you build a relationship with the other side and you're let down because politics take over reason, and that is more frustrating, I think, than if I had just kind of stuck to my side of the aisle and didn't work with them and just threw bombs across and never worked with Republicans. So you do get stung if you reach out from time to time. But I think it is worth it. And I think when I was running for Congress, we knocked on 100,000 doors during the campaign. And Otto, you were out there at many of them. And the number one issue that I heard going door to door across Pleasanton, Dublin, Livermore, San Ramon was not any specific policy on the economy. It wasn't, sorry to say, MID. It wasn't anything about our foreign policy. The number one issue that people brought up to us when we were knocking on doors was, why can't Congress just work together? And that still rings true with me, and I still hear that and still try and do what I can to reach across the aisle, as long as there are hands over there to reach it.
There's a great book by Ira Shapiro called The Last Great Senate, and it's, I don't know if you've had a chance to read it. I think we've talked about it. It's a great book. It talks about the great Senate in the late 60s with a lot of the young, after the war, Vietnam War, a lot of the young statesmen, that they treated the Senate as an institution. They honored it. It was a pleasure, it was an honor to serve in the Senate. Can we get back to that?
I hope so.
I think we can get back to that.
I think both sides recognize that one of the worst things that happened to the institution of the House of Representatives, and it's interesting to hear Republicans and Democrats kind of pinpoint what they think one of the root causes was when Newt Gingrich came in 1994, before he had arrived as Speaker of the House, the congressional calendar was pretty filled. So members of Congress would work Monday through Friday, and then have a short weekend, and then we're back in Washington. And what Newt Gingrich did he ran against Washington, that was his whole campaign, was he really truncated the calendar to a 3-day work week. So we are now, this past week is a perfect example. I flew in Monday night, we voted on one piece of legislation at 6:30, and then Tuesday and Wednesday we had votes, and then Thursday morning I was headed out to the airport to come home. So that's about 3 days of working. And the idea was to have members of Congress spend more time in their districts to be at home, which also helped them campaign a little bit more so that you could protect your majority. And so many, and I've talked to a lot of the elders of Congress, as I call them, and so many of them point to that as where one of the tipping points. That once members of Congress only would see each other for about 3 days a week, 3 weeks a month, that the relationships with the other side started to break apart and deteriorate. And that, I certainly understand what can happen when somebody stops spending time in the district. That was a large part of my campaign in 2012, was that my opponent no longer even owned a residence in the district, or even had a residence in the district, and stopped coming home. I think, Gingrich was responding in part to that, and that frustration. However, I think the pendulum has so wildly swung to the other side that, we really spend almost no time in Washington together. We're not able to get to know each other. But this trip that I took, while informative, and I thought that conveying and meeting with these heads of states was important for our relations and the decisions I have to make. When I got the manifest of the other members of Congress who were going on that trip to the Middle East, I saw 6 names that I'd never met before. Republican members who I'd never met before. I knew they were members of Congress, but I couldn't pick them out at pistol point. And it was a little daunting to think about traveling with people that I didn't even know. But I'll have to tell you,
all be Republicans.
Right, let alone be Republicans. But at the end of the trip, I was so grateful that I spent 8 days with these other Republicans, and we forged relationships on that trip that I think will serve us well in the future. I was actually able to recruit one of the members on that trip into my group, the United Solutions Caucus. So that, I found value in it. A member from Alabama wants me to come down to Mobile. He even taught me how to pronounce Mobile. And he wants me to come down to Mobile and talk about what we're doing here with the innovation economy and the biotech economy to some of his innovation leaders down there. So it was a productive trip. And so I think the more time we spend together, that kind of breaks down some of the barriers that get thrown up when we're not there in Washington and we're just on the cable news channel, throwing bombs at each other.
I found what was real interesting about this one segment in the book is that these statesmen were young. And I really think that the key to success for this country move forward is that we need to get more youth involved in our politics. We need to get more people like you, people that are in their 20s and their 30s. And some of these people that have been around a long time have a lot of baggage, a lot of, issues with each other, resentments, whatever. And it was just amazing that how this entity was so functional back in the late 60s. And it was just remarkable, the Kennedys and the Goldwaters. You just had real profound guys that were passionate. I mean, men and women that were just passionate, they were pissed off. They wanted to make change, and I applaud you for that, for doing that. Yeah, let's take some questions. I want to ask one question because I know you guys are going to hammer them. How do you handle that? I mean, you're a Democrat. You represent independents, Republicans. You represent young, old, people with different, varied social issues. You go home and go, God, they don't like me, or how does that work?
Well, I've come to learn that if I were to pass out a 10-question survey to each person here, ranging from foreign policy to economics to tax policy to energy policy, and I didn't tell you what the Democratic position was and what the Republican position was, or what the conservative or liberal viewpoints were, that it probably wouldn't match up 100% of who you identify as a voter. So I've come to learn that a lot of these, I would say, identities that we have, or these labels that we wear as Republican or Democratic, they're just those. Every person is different, and every person has different values. And what I try and do, as I said, is to just listen and understand and recognize that I may not agree with Phil on issue A, B, or C, but on D and E, we see eye to eye. And just because he believes what he does on issue A does not mean that on issue E, he and I can agree. And so I've come to learn that, people, for different reasons, a Republican, may be, conservative on, a bunch of different tax and environment and economic issues, but maybe because of a family member, who was gay, they may be more socially progressive on that issue. And I shouldn't just assume that, the Republican Party, isn't as progressive on gay rights and equality as Democrats, so I should never reach out to them on that issue. So I found that people, you can't paint people with a broad stroke. And so, trying to find consensus is, I think, one of the ways that you don't get frustrated and try and, so one of my favorite examples, a group came into my office, much more conservative group, and they had some tough asks. They knew to ask for something. And they had, when I said, okay, is there anything I can help you with? And they said, well, we don't think you can help us. And so they gave me their first ask. And I said, well, I don't really believe in that, so I can't help you there. Then they gave me their second ask. And I said, I don't think I can support you on that one. I kind of laid out why. And then they gave me their third ask. And again, I told them, I wasn't going to sign on to that letter. And it was starting to get uncomfortable. And I kind of said, is there anything else going on? And this group said, well, we've got this port issue with the FDA, and the FDA is kind of, giving our imports a hard time and a lot of scrutiny. And I said, that I can call over to the FDA and find out what's going on and what we can do. And it took me 4 times to say, okay, is there anything else? Is there anything else? Is there anything else? But I think if you approach this job as trying to be a problem solver rather than trying to be a partisan, you can be more effective. And so I've always tried to just take, what can I help my constituents with, and just work through and explain to them why I can't on the issues I can't, but try and find consensus. Because at the end of the day, I want to go home and show productivity. I don't want to just say, I sat down at the table, I asked for 100% of what I wanted, they won't give it to me, so I went home and at least I stuck to my principles. I mean, that's not productivity to me.
Okay, great. Let's start with some questions. Go ahead, Benny.
Well, it's an honor to see you again, Congressman.
Thank you for coming.
My name is Scott Shane, and I have a quick question. What do you feel about the President Obama is going to use executive privilege to allow 5 million or whatever millions of illegal immigrants in this country? Do you feel that he has a right to do executive privilege, or should he go through Congress and get a law passed about the immigration problem in this country?
So the question from Scott was, should the president use his executive order authority to make broad changes to our immigration policy? As I mentioned earlier, I believe we need comprehensive immigration reform. The Senate has passed with 68 votes. So that's a bipartisan vote, a comprehensive immigration reform bill, which has tight border security. I think it goes too far. It doubles the number of border agents on the border, which I think that's spending $20 additional billion that I don't think we need to do that much. But it also has a roadmap to citizenship for people who have been here and go through a line. They don't cut the line of anyone else. They pay a fee. They go through a background check. And then it also has a way for people who go to our schools and study here from overseas for them to become a citizen. It's stapling the green card to the diploma. I would like to just see that bill put up or down in the House of Representatives for a vote. Right now, the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, he's the only person who can decide what gets an up or down vote. And the Republican caucus is split on whether or not they want a vote on that. And so the Speaker is following a long-time tradition, which both parties have subscribed to, which is you only put something forward for a vote if you have the majority of the majority. So the majority of the people in your party support it. So the Speaker won't put it forward for a vote. So the President, I think, is faced with two bad options. Does he just allow no action on immigration and for people to continue to live in shadows and fear of being removed, or does he kind of push up against the limits of what his legal authority is? I think that when it comes to people who are here undocumented, who have not committed any crimes in our country after coming across the border and are just trying to support themselves and their family and realize the American dream, I think he should do what he can to suspend any removal proceedings for them. I really do strongly believe that. As a former prosecutor, I believe that anyone who comes across our border who's undocumented and is committing crimes and hurting people here in our country, they have to be gone as soon as they serve their sentences here, as swiftly and as fast as possible. But I do think that the President has to act for the sake of many of these families. We're working on a case right now in our office. A young boy named Alfred, he's 9 years old. He was born in the United States. His mom came over here when she was 4 years old with her family. His mom, a couple of years ago, was caught up in a raid, and because she's undocumented, because she came over here at age 4, went through all our schools, said the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, only thought of herself as a U.S. citizen, but because she was undocumented, she got removed. And she had to make what I think is one of the hardest decisions a mother could make, which was, does she take Alfred back to Mexico with her, or does she have him stay here and get fostered through a foster family while she goes through the citizenship process? She thought that the best chance at the best life for Alfred was for him to stay here in the United States. And so we're working to try and reunite the two of those. But I think we have to have a more reasonable immigration policy that separates the good from the bad and recognizes why people are coming here, and that when they come here and take a risk to be here, chances are they're not going to just sap our resources. They're going to put their heads down and help our economy.
All right, we got one more question.
Hi. Thanks, Congressman,
Yeah.
for being here and all you do. Quick question, a little bit more locally with regards to solar, sort of environmental and housing. We're seeing a lot of residential homes and businesses putting in solar energy. And one of the things as a realtor that when I go to a listing or talking with them with regards to if they've leased it, if they've purchased it, what all that looks like, because it's so new for us in the housing industry. One of the concerns that I have is in 10 years from now, these panels are no longer good. They sort of burn out, if you will. And then where do they go and what does that impact look? Is there regulation? Is there guidelines? Is there stuff on how we can recycle those down the road? Maybe I'm just naive to it all, but just looking at it from a practitioner's point, we are dealing with this now. I mean, I think in my neighborhood, there's probably 10 houses that have put up solar panels. And talking with them, because I'm curious, every lease that they have signed is different than the neighbors next door. And transferring that to a new owner, and then if those, they basically say, those panels are yours, you have to dispose of them. What is, are you hearing anything about this? I know it's very new. Is there legislation around how you handle those panels? Are we going to start seeing homeowners throwing them in the dumps? Like, just kind of looking at that down the road, so.
That's a great question. I'm obviously a big supporter of going green and seeing our green energy economy around here expand. We have a number of companies that work in this space. Solar Universe is headquartered in Livermore, and there's another one called Cooler Solar, which is in Livermore and came out of the national laboratories. And I just went to a grand opening of a business that just went solar in Dublin. So it is exciting. It's bringing down the cost. It's reducing our overall carbon production. But you're right, there are these long-term issues. And as I understand it, when you put solar on your home, it's kind of one of two constructs. Either the homeowner owns the panels or the homeowner leases the panels from the solar company, who then, when the solar panels are no longer productive, the solar company is responsible for removing them, and then the homeowner can make a decision about putting new panels in. But the real issue sounds like you have a homeowner, they get their use out of the panels, they upgrade and move out of the neighborhood, and then some new homeowner comes in, and what do you do? I think this is an issue that probably needs to be contemplated at the point of sale, and understanding what the buyer should have an understanding of what the shelf life is on those panels, and that would probably be, that should be factored into the value of the home, and then the destruction of those panels, because you can't just put them, because they're photovoltaic, you can't just put them in the trash. They would have to go to a hazardous waste facility. I think that should also be put into the contract. I'm going to learn more about this though, because I don't know it all, so I'll get back to you and see what laws are out there. So thank you again for having me here. I'm always happy to come to this. I always wish that when I was on a comedy stage I could be funnier, but thanks for having me back. And
How about a round of applause for our conference?